The July 11th, 2016 meeting of the City of Danville Planning Commission is now called to order. Welcome everyone to the meeting today. Welcome our mayor for being with us today. Glad to have you. The Planning Commission is an advisory board to the Danville City Council and is comprised of members who serve on a volunteer basis. Today we have 5 items to consider, which there will be a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against the item may do so at that time. After the public hearing, commissioner members may have questions for staff and for those who have spoken for or against the requested change. The Planning Commission will review the case relative to the city code and make a recommendation before the city council, and council will consider these items at the August 4th meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Bolton?
Here.
Ms. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Garrison?
Here.
Mr. Dodson?
Present.
Mr. Scarce?
Here. Okay, first item on the agenda is a rezoning application, PLRZ 2016-0000-149, filed by George Lovelace, requesting to rezone from NC Neighborhood Retail Commercial to Conditional Highway Retail Commercial, 1910 North Main Street. The applicant is proposing to operate an automobile retail establishment at this site. We could have a staff report, please.
A request has been filed by George Lovelace to rezone 1910 North Main Street from neighborhood retail commercial to conditional highway retail commercial. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property for the operation of an automobile retail establishment. The .40 acre subject parcel is currently improved with a vacant building. In the past, it was the location of Roy's Soul Food Restaurant and Lounge, Designs in Glass, and a video production business. Presently, it is proposed to be the location of an automobile retail establishment with ingress and egress from North Main Street and Fuller Street. The subject parcel is bordered on all sides by properties zoned Old Town Residential. There is commercial property to the north that is zoned Transitional Office Commercial and Neighborhood Commercial. The nearest property in the vicinity that is zoned Conditional Highway Retail Commercial lies approximately 0.3 miles north of the subject property on North Main Street. 36 notices were sent to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and a complete report is in front of you. At the meeting of June 13, 2016, the planning staff recommended denial of a rezoning to Highway Retail Commercial District without conditions. Staff noted they could support a conditional HRC rezoning if the applicant proffered out the uses that could be detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood. The applicant stated at the meeting he was willing to work with staff on a list of conditions, so Planning Commission voted to table the request. The applicant has met with staff and both parties have agreed to the list of conditions which is attached to this report. The limits the property to the uses in existence with the NC zoning currently on the property with the addition of automobile sales. Staff can now recommend approval of this request with the list of conditions proffered by the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Open the public hearing now. If there's anyone wishing to speak on this item, come forth now.
Good afternoon. I'm just asking the zone, to change the zoning of North, and I may be able to sell cars there, in which I made dramatic improvements, to the building already, and to the landscaping, cut all the dead trees down, and clean the parking lot up where it will make the community itself look, presentable, and real good. And I appreciate, you all doing that for me. And I work with Zone, and he's been awfully good, in helping me and in advising me, in what to do and what not to do. Thank you.
Okay. Hold on just a second. Any questions from any of the members for Mr. Lovelace? Yes.
There was a question last month that you might lose your license to practice this, and you were worried about that, and how did that work out?
I got the guy at Laurel Park told he had a vacant building sitting there, where he parked his trailers and stuff at. He allowed me to use that building until you all approved this, just to say that I have a building.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this item on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Seeing if we have any other questions, comments?
Are you Are you guys satisfied? It sounds like it in here, satisfied with the arrangement that has been made?
Yes, we sat down, went over the list, use by use, scratched through, didn't scratch through. We just haven't formalized the list in case Planning Commission added anything at today's meeting. If there's no additional, then we'll get a formal list and have him sign it and send that to City Council. So yeah, we're okay with it.
Okay. If we could have a motion, or if there's no other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I recommend approval of rezoning application PLRZ 2016-00000149 with proper list as submitted.
Okay, do I have a second? Second by Mr. Garrison. And roll call, please.
You said Garrison second?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not nearly as fast as
That's
Tracy is.
okay.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a special use permit application, PLSUP 2016-00000165, filed by Prior Development Company, requesting a special use permit to operate an indoor commercial recreation facility in accordance with Section 3N, Article 3N, Section C, Item 4 in the Code of the City of Danville at 1344 West Main Street. The applicant is proposing to operate an indoor commercial recreation facility for gaming. If we could have a staff report, please.
The applicant, Prior Development Company, is requesting a special use permit for indoor commercial recreation at 1344 West Main Street in accordance with Article 3N, Section C, Item 4 of the Code of the City of Danville, Virginia, 1986. The applicant is proposing to operate an indoor commercial recreation facility for gaming. The .487 acre subject parcel is the site of the Dan River Plaza. The subject parcel is zoned planned shopping center and has ingress and egress on West Main Street. The applicant is planning to operate a commercial bingo hall in the shopping center. 17 notices were sent to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and a complete report is in front of you. The making, placing, or receipt of any bet or wager in this city of money or other things of value made in exchange for a chance to win a prize, stake, or other consideration or thing of value, depended upon the result of any game, contest, or any other event, the outcome of which is uncertain or a matter of chance, whether such game, contest, or event occurs or is to occur inside or outside the limits of this city, shall constitute illegal gambling. City Code allows qualified organizations to conduct bingo games on the condition that a reasonable investigation is conducted by the Chief of Police and a permit issued. Qualified organizations are defined in the state bingo law as having membership consisting of at least 50% residents of the Commonwealth. Staff is concerned that the use proposed by the applicant may fall under the definition of illegal gambling. City has had an influx of illegal sweepstakes operations following a ban on such operations in Rockingham County, North Carolina, that went into effect on July 1st, 2015. A business, the Ruffin Depot, owned by the applicant, was searched by the Rockingham County Sheriff's Department in September 2015 and was found to be the site of a illegal gambling operation. Staff recommends denial of special use permit application PLSUP 2016-00000165, filed by Prior Development Company to operate commercial indoor recreation at 1344 West Main Street to run a commercial bingo hall.
Thank you. I'll open the public hearing. If there's someone wishing to come forth at this time to speak on this matter. Please state your name for the record.
I'm W.L. Pryor. I'm from the Ruffin area. I did operate the Ruffin Depot. These matters are still in litigation in the state of North Carolina, but the Commonwealth of Virginia has rules that regulate bingo, and it's nonprofits who are allowed to operate bingo facilities. The only thing I would be doing would be providing a space for them to rent. I would have the bingo equipment in the facility, and more than one nonprofit charity would be using the facility and the equipment. All I would be the landlord. I would not be operating a bingo. I am not a resident of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I do not have a nonprofit. It would be my task to find tenants to come in and operate their bingo to make money for the charity. And we've talked with several. We don't have anybody committed yet. These laws from the Commonwealth, there are several what they call fraternals operating within the city of Danville already, VFWs, American Legions, that have bingo. And they operate, and I don't know of any problems any of them have had. Mine would be a non-smoking, no alcohol facility. It wouldn't be either one allowed inside the facility. And any questions?
Any of the commissioners have some questions for Adeline?
I got a question. One of the things that staff mentioned was membership consisting of at least 50% residents of the Commonwealth. Now, if you were renting this property to different people, how can you be sure that there's going to be at least 50% at each of these nights?
The people, the bingo would be open to the public. The operators of it would be the nonprofits. That's the law in the state of the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's sort of confusing, the state and the Commonwealth. I've never figured out quite the difference, but anyway.
Excuse me, can we ask our lawyer then? How do you interpret this with the 50% residents of the Commonwealth are going to have to go to this?
We're gonna have to check IDs, I guess, when they come in, so that it's gonna be up to it's gonna be initially up to his tenant, and then ultimately up to him to make sure that his tenant is enforcing the fact that 50% of the folks are in fact members of the Commonwealth, or citizens of the Commonwealth.
Okay.
But it says here, I think we're getting into some legal stuff that's hard for me to get my head around, but it says qualified organizations. It sounds to me like the organization is the one that actually runs the bingo.
That's correct. What he's saying is he's providing a place and equipment for them, and they will actually run it. But ultimately, since the zoning application is in his name, he ultimately will have to make sure, and since it's his building, ultimately make sure the law's followed.
Do we have assurances that if we approve this special use permit to operate an indoor commercial recreation facility for gaming, is it gonna be limited to bingo? I mean, gaming could be other things or not? Are we picking it too much?
That's a question for Mr. Gilly.
We don't have assurances on anything.
But could we limit it to bingo or not? I mean, if we go further than this, but.
You could go further than that, limit it to bingo and bingo only. We just have to make sure that we're complying with Title 18.2 of the state code when we do this.
Right.
So,
But we could limit it at some point to bingo, because it says gaming, and that could be a lot of things.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of my big concerns too, is like, of course, we're not speaking to him now, but, one of my big concerns here is definitions. And by saying yes to something, are we saying yes to more than what we think we're saying yes to? That's.
And I had a question too, I guess related. It seems to me that when you read that, the person qualified to run the bingo is the one who ought to be applying for the use permit rather than someone who is subleasing, rather than the nonprofit leasing from this gentleman who's going to be leasing from the shopping center. Is that legal? I mean,
Yes, that's correct. I mean, otherwise, anybody that ever wanted to do this would have to be full of folks coming forward asking for special use permits to run a bingo game. So,
you had another question?
I heard a couple times in your introduction, nonprofit. So you're going to buy this facility and make it nonprofit? I mean, how?
No. First of all, a nonprofit, my understanding in the Commonwealth, has to be, you have to have been a resident of the Commonwealth for 3 years before you could apply. These are already existing nonprofits. You can go on a website for the Commonwealth of Virginia and find all of these area nonprofits. And there are a large number of them, ranging from Averett University to Hargrave Military Academy to the VFWs, the American Legions, baseball teams, the GW football boosters. It's a large number. I'm going to guess maybe 200. I didn't count them, but it's a large number. And the ones I would be dealing with are those who are already qualified. And, you know, if they aren't on that list, there's no, and they have to apply for a license. They can't just, you know, come into my facility and start. They have to apply with the Department of Agriculture, is the one that regulates this. And they would
Follow up. Will you just get rent money, or will you get a portion of the gate when people come in and buy those tickets?
Just rent money. We would determine
Will
the rent.
Excuse me, will the rent be based on how many people show up?
No, sir. We would determine the rent beforehand, and that's what the rent would be.
And it would be on a weekly basis, and it would be different organizations perhaps every week?
Right. A commercial bingo, you can have different organizations come in. Of course, they're all nonprofits, and have different nights or different, they call them sessions. And a session consists of no more than 55 bingo games. And I haven't played bingo since I was 14 years old, maybe, or maybe younger, but a lot of people like bingo. I would provide the tables, the chairs, the TV screens, the machine that flips the balls up to, got the numbers on them. I would clean the facility once they left. The next group that came in would have a clean facility. They wouldn't have to worry about that. The thing about it, nonprofits are supposed to operate the bingo. And I don't know how many of y'all are familiar. I've dealt with nonprofits from Boosters Club to YMCAs to community college foundations trying to raise money. And trying to get all the people out to support your activity is a challenge. You know, everybody will say, oh yeah, I'll help do that, but when the time comes, how many of them forget to, oh, I forgot. I've heard that many times. I've been involved in a lot of things over the past 50 years trying to raise money, and it's getting more difficult, I think, as time goes on.
Let me ask a question again for staff. Regular bingo, obviously, I guess, is legal to do in the state of Virginia because it's run now. Is that correct? Your concern is there may be other things other than bingo here, or that bingo would be run incorrectly, or what?
We're concerned, first off, how the game would operate. Second off, there are a lot of things under Chapter 18.2 of the state code that allows for bingo, and whether those would be followed through this operation is a concern of staff. You remember a few years ago when we had issues with the
Computers.
sweepstakes and other things, that the same thing's happening in North Carolina, and we've had multiple calls again. So we have real concerns that this operation is not necessarily following the rules under 18.2, Chapter 340 of the Code of Virginia. And that's why staff is not in favor of recommending approval of it.
How would we know I mean, if we go with your recommendation, we would turn it down, obviously. What's his alternative? How could he prove that it's not going to be illegal? Or can it be proven the way you just called?
First off, some sort of wording from the Department of, excuse me, just had it a second ago. The Charitable Gaming Board, stating that the way this is proposed complies with that. I don't have anything at this moment except someone's asking to operate this at that location. So I have nothing else to go on. If I had something from the department that said, yes, the way this is operating will comply with all sections 18.2,
Right.
then I could look at it differently. At this point, I have none of that.
Right, okay.
So you don't know if there's these types of facilities anywhere else in Virginia?
I do not. I know we have a few facilities here in Danville that actually operate bingo nights.
Right.
Okay, and as far as I know, from the operation of those, they are in compliance with this 18.2 of the Code of Virginia. I have not received anything from the state otherwise. I don't have anything saying that this would comply with that.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? I was going to see if there's anybody else. Okay, thank you, sir.
We would have to comply. I mean, there wouldn't, the folks come from the state to check these facilities. I've been to Roanoke and seen one that's operated by a swimming pool group. They raise money through that bingo facility, and having other charities come in. They have a couple of nights themselves, but they pay the expenses of their pool, their travel expenses for the kids going to swim. It's an opportunity that it was interesting to talk with the lady who operated that to see the good it was doing them.
Yeah, here's my little thing, it's a little nuance, but I think it's important. That sounds fine, and like the American Legion or whoever does these things, they sound like they're gotten all the proper license and whatever things, credentials to do this. This strikes me as a commercial venture on your part to provide a space for organizations to come in and basically run the bingo. So they're still gonna have to get all the legal stuff. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
The organization would have to get the legal credentials to go into this place, which you're running as just a commercial space.
That's
so you're
it.
not like the swimming organization.
No, sir.
You're just a commercial space providing space for this.
That's it. So they don't, the facilities don't have to be duplicated. It's expensive to buy all the equipment, set all this up, and then you've got to have somebody to come in and clean it up if it's your building.
But it sounds like an interesting business opportunity, but I'm also hearing a lot of unanswered questions too. It just seems like there's a lot of vague things about where it fits into the Virginia Code and like who can use it and what those people are going to have to do. So I'm beginning to see why there were some concerns at staff level on this.
Well, maybe there's somebody with the charitable bingo with the state who could come in and answer these questions for you. To me,
Oftentimes whenever we have to hear things, finding enough information, really well-presented plans that have like a lot of information, really helps us out with stuff like that. Because we don't want to be saying yes to things that we probably shouldn't be saying yes to. That's kind of part of it.
See, it would depend, I'll get right back to you, it would depend on each individual person that came in to rent from you will be a whole new ballgame every time, that we wouldn't know whether they were legal or not legal or anything, I guess is what we're saying.
Won't they be on the list?
Huh?
Won't they be on the approved list? If they're not on the list, you can't do it.
that's right.
If the GW Football Booster Club wants to come make some money and they're not on the list, you can't let them in. But if they're on the list, they
When
can.
they apply with charitable bingo, charitable gaming, they'll be denied if they aren't a 501c3.
You're not gonna let them in if they're not on the list.
No, they can't get a license. Each one has to have a license.
Let's say George Washington High School Booster Club wants to rent it. You're going to set a flat fee for them.
right?
Right.
And then, as you just gave an example, when it's time for the fundraiser, a lot of people don't show, and all of a sudden they don't even make enough money to cover their rent, but they still owe you rent for that night.
Yes,
Well,
Bill?
they would have to get organized. I mean, you know.
I agree.
And the number required would be from 6 to 10 people, depending on how many people you had in the facility. And some nights they might get by with 4. It would just depend on how aggressive they wanted to be going around and selling bingo cards, and it can be run with fewer than 6 to 10 people.
Mr. Bolton?
Yeah, well, just a very vague question, really, but you can maybe give me some generalities. What do you see, I mean, hours of operation, how many days a week? I mean, give me a good week in your mind of that business for you. I mean, what do you?
With my intentions are with that space would be to divide it into 2 sections, which is the way it has been before. It has the accommodations to have 2 separate, facilities in there. They have bathrooms, they have doors. It wouldn't be a problem to divide it. It's a short wall about as closer than from here to you that needs to be put up to make it into 2 rooms. We could have 4 days of bingo doing it that way. The other way would only be 2, which would not be profitable.
So you see, about nights, days?
It would depend on that nonprofit, the hours they wanted to do it. Now, you've got to have a schedule for everybody, something that will work for everybody, and sort of first come, first served. It's a matter of, if you're first, you pick your time frame. And each one of these each charity can have 2 sessions a week.
How many hours? You
Well,
said 55 games.
It's
You don't know how
55
many.
games.
You can't say.
When they play the 55 games, that's supposed to be the end of it.
How long's that run?
Depends on how fast the bingo caller calls the numbers.
I was playing it day all night.
Y'all have a tough job. I know that. The planning board, I was a county commissioner in Rockingham County, and it's, the planning board, I always thought their job was tougher because we got the easy decisions because y'all have done the pre-screening. It's a tough job. I know it is.
So on these nights, days, whatever, will there be policemen there? Do you hire policemen to staff it, or does the organization hire?
They would have to do that. And I would hope that wouldn't be necessary, but, I couldn't say whether it would be or not. I would hope it wouldn't be. I was in the sweepstakes business in Rockingham County for 2.5 years. I never had any problem. I didn't have any security. I was not there always. I still didn't have a problem. It's an older clientele for the most part. I think bingo players are. So most times the older people get smarter for some reason, and you don't. And that's not to say that somebody couldn't come in who had been drinking, and sometimes they stay. The longer they stay, they had the drink somewhere else. It's like operating a bar. If you operate a bar, you don't know what somebody's had to drink before they got there. And 30 minutes in there, all of a sudden, they're a problem. So, but the older crowd, you have fewer problems. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pryor. I think that someone else might want to speak
Right.
too. Thank you. Was there someone else wishing to come up? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Jones, and I'm the chairman from the Danville Public School Board. And we didn't make a decision one way or the other on our meeting the other night. Some of the questions still are vague. They were asked a little while ago. There's a school that's within 300 feet, which is Schofield Elementary School. We had some concerns that were not in the letter that we received. Number one was operational hours. There's nothing there telling us whether this is going on during the school day. We had some concerns about, it says gaming. Again, he's saying bingo, but what we got just said gaming with an example of bingo. Another concern we had was if there has been a study in the area to say whether there's a need for this, because you have the American Legion that's in the area that they have bingo games going on. We had the concern about alcohol and security. So those are the things that we could not make a decision on because they were not answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on the item? Nobody? Okay, and we'll close the public hearing. And, yes, sir, Mr. Garris.
I have a question for staff, actually two. On the application, it says 1344 and 1346 West Main, and 8,000 square feet. I went over there and looked at the building, and this is not the grocery store, the old Kroger store. This is the section next to it, which is two sections, as he said, with a wall down most of it. I counted ceiling tile, which is one way to determine space, and I figure it's about 60 by 60, which is 3,600 square feet. So there's a big deficiency in the square footage on the application itself, plus it's showing two addresses rather than one. Is there anything that you can tell me about that straightens that out, or is it?
The address is for the shopping center itself. You know, it could be any portion of that shopping center. It's not
Okay.
a specific, it's not listed, you know, as Unit A, Unit B. It could be any part of that. So he could go back in, as he said, reconfigure it to have just an 8,000 square feet portion of that and use it. Our staff didn't make any conditional recommendations or anything else. We have concerns with this, and that's why we recommend the denial. If Planning Commission wishes to forward it on with something else, you could put a condition on it that it's limited to certain sizes and other things.
Okay, I was curious as to whether he was going to take part of the grocery store. But
It looks
doesn't-
like.
but it doesn't matter.
It looks like by the aerial, it's probably that space right to the right of the grocery
Well,
store.
That space is 60 by 60, give or take. So that's
Both, it's two
3,600.
sections, and one part was two sections. Is that
Yeah,
both of them?
they're 30 by 60. They're 30 wide and 60 deep,
Okay.
roughly. The second question I have is, has this been bounced off of the chief's of police's desk? Is he aware of this? Because it says in here that he's going to have to issue permits.
We did not bounce it off his desk now.
Okay, thank you.
Would that be something we would do before voting? I mean, if he,
The state, in the way the regulations read, is that something that's handled really at the state level prior to the issuance of the permits. There's a lot of ifs and ands under that section of the state code, and that's one of the things that would be taken care of at that point. We didn't apply, we didn't notify them that they've applied for this, just because that would come at a later stage.
that would be the next step. In other words, if we approved it, then he would then do that.
If council would approve it,
And then council, and then, right.
then it, correct.
Following up on Mr. Garrison, so if I understood your response, what we're kind of have before us is essentially the grocery store plus, and any part of that could be divided up if we were to limit or anything like that.
Correct.
So really what's at issue is the whole vacant shopping area
Correct.
at this point.
Correct.
So it's another kind of vague thing. We don't really know.
Correct.
The fire codes would limit the number of people though, wouldn't it?
The building code and fire code could limit, but it would limit based on the structure. You could modify the structure and that could increase your occupant load. So you could potentially get larger if you sprinkled it or did other things. Again, I don't know, depending on how that building is laid out. So, number of bathrooms are limiting factors. There's a lot of things that come into play.
Let me ask you a question. If we deny this, all right, because that's your recommendation, if we deny this, what would be the process for him to come back with more clarified information, some of the things that we have uncertainties about, and to reapply, same space, reapply?
If you deny it, so it goes on to city council. It's up to city council on what decision they make.
That's right.
Okay. Again, trying not to make an assumption on what city council, if city council would, under the assumption, deny it, then they would have to come back through with a substantially different application. They could, change the way it's laid out, give a lot more detail, label the space. There's some things that they could do that could bring it back in front of this board. If not, and they just want to ask for the same vague thing, then they have to wait a year before they apply again. Well, not truly a year because of the time frames. It's about 9 months, give or take.
I think.
Table it?
If you table it, it gives them time to go back and address these things and then try to come back next month.
Could you use that time to research it more for the state of Virginia to find out if this is going on in any other place, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Arlington, any place, and get more input possibly from the Attorney General or anything like that as to how this applies to us with the Code of Virginia?
We could gather a little more information on how other places are dealing with this. Get more information from the Attorney General and others. The Code of Virginia is pretty self-explanatory. The 18.2 spells out who qualifies and where these things should occur, what they can do. I'm not as much concerned with that. We just have concerns with there's a lot of open-ended questions on this facility. I think if anything, the applicant should come back with much more detail on exactly how they're going to do this and how they're going to comply with Section 18.2 of the code. But staff could go and ask other places how they've handled this kind of thing. I don't disagree with that part of it.
So it's, in your opinion, incumbent upon the applicant to provide enough details, not just ask you to go get it.
We have a lot of unanswered questions, and we're concerned, as the school board said, that a school's within close proximity. We don't have anything that limits it. They could be doing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week next to a school if this is granted. I don't have any of that. I have some concerns that this is not the right location for that type of use.
I think the question, what makes it so difficult is if this was the Boy Scouts coming before us, if this was the Girl Scouts, or if this was a nonprofit coming before us, we know who they are and what they're doing. We've got an applicant coming before us that's just an entity that would lease it to other people, saying that all of those would have to have their own individual collective nonprofit organization set up, and that's the loophole I think he's talking about. There's no control over who would be using it, and no guarantee that it would be the Boy Scouts or whoever.
There are other locations in the city that if this type of operation was something that they looked at, I think would still be a better fit for this.
Do you have another question?
Well, so it wouldn't be illegal necessarily if we put certain conditions, or would you still think it was illegal if we put
Limited to bingo or something?
The conditions of just bingo, of no operating during school hours or school hours, and things like this, a number of conditions. Does that change your opinion of the legality of it, or is it still in gray area?
Staff has more concerns with it than just the legality of it. We have concerns with the location. We have concerns with the hours. We have concerns with the proximity to schools. One of the things we had was also whether this is even legal in Virginia. Taking that fact out, staff still has concerns that this location is not the appropriate location for this type. There are facilities, Riverside, Piney Forest, that are not, that close to schools, that are commercial in the heart of major commercial areas, things like that. That if this type of thing was going on, we think that would be a better fit for it than this shopping center near one of our elementary schools. Also churches across the street, some other things. There are a number of reasons we're not in favor of this site. The legality is just one of those questions. There's a lot of things that we don't have information, we don't have those answered, and even if we did have some of them answered, I'm not sure that this would be the right spot anyway.
Does he own that property? Or
No,
he
no.
does not own it, so he could go somewhere else, easily. It's not like he owns that building and this is just one shot. He could go somewhere.
Correct, he will be a leaseholder of the building.
Okay.
You do say in your staff analysis, applicant may fall under the definition of illegal gambling.
Correct.
is there any way that we can find out in more detail if this falls under that?
Until it is an operation and found to not be, then it's legal. Once it's found, then it's not. We just have concerns with the way our take of 18.2 is and the way that we think this operation, based on what information we have, that it would not comply with this. As he said, it would be up to the state, and as you read through this, it's up to the state to actually determine the legality of it. But our read of this is we have concerns, and that's why we expressed we think it may. We're not saying it does or does not, but our take on this is we feel it may.
Well, I hate for him to buy this property
He's
if
not
that's
buying,
what,
he's
and
just
then
leasing.
find out later.
He's just leasing it.
He's gonna lease it,
Then
okay.
sublease, yeah.
And remind me again, just so I can hear it again, if we say no, then what are his options going forward in terms of coming back on this particular property?
He will go to city council. He will be scheduled for the next city council meeting. It's up to city council to make a formal determination, yes or no, and they could remand it back to you. There's a couple different options at the council level. Assuming that they would say no, just period no. He could find another location. He could work with staff on that location, but limiting it to certain things, providing some more information, hours, square footages, some other things that would make this a substantially different application. Even flesh out exactly who is going to be able to use the facility. Because under the 18.2, there is a list of organizations that comply, and then there's also a sub-list that's 501c3 organizations. So there are boxes that could be checked off that I just don't have at the moment. So he would have other options even on this facility, or we could work with him on making sure we're in compliance and then finding what we feel would be a better location.
So if we denied it and it went to city council, they could send it back to us, which would be almost like tabling it here today. I mean, they could send it back and doesn't put him any further behind in his time frame, or would it?
It would, if it goes to council and back to you, it's an extra 60 days, but that would possibly give him time to figure some things out, or again, find other spots that would be more appropriate.
Okay.
So if we table it, it's not just tabled for 1 month, we could table it for 2 months or 3 months, or is it just the 1 month?
Just the 1 month. Action has to be taken by planning commission within a certain period, whether it's up or down. City council, when they hear it, they have a little more leeway on how they operate, so they can, remand something back for more information, but you can't sit on something in perpetuity. It prevents you, from getting something and then just never acting on it. You do have a limited time. So if you table it, it would have to come to you next month. You'd have to send it up or down, period, next month so the council can make that decision.
Yeah, one of my reluctance about tabling is that I'm not sure if they bring it back, it's gonna change the planning department's view of some of the concerns, like being your schools and other things. In other words, I don't know I don't hear anything there that's gonna resolve that if they already have questions about the property in and of itself and location. So the other process of letting it go through maybe coming back to us that'd be time to vet it, at least.
Right.
And he could go with more information to city council, even though we denied it. He could, at the city council meeting, he could have new information, better information, and may even make their decision easier. That's making it tough for us, maybe.
When was the last time we denied something and city council sent it back to us?
I'm sorry, 20 years, I'm trying to remember them all.
I'm thinking about that.
They had one that wasn't,
We had one back.
I was gonna say one or,
In the
but a
last
year or so ago, they sent one back.
I don't remember one since I've been on.
Yeah, there was one that was sent back, and I'm sorry, I can't remember which one it was.
I'm starting to lean towards tabling. Only the fact that it gives him a chance, it also gives you a chance. And it narrows down the time frame. That's what I'm leaning towards.
Mr. Chairman, could I add something?
Okay.
The laws are spelled out if you read them. And I'm not being critical of staff, but the laws are there. And I think it's easily understood that nonprofits are the ones who operate the bingo, and a commercial bingo hall is part of this law, that you can have a facility that nonprofits can come in and rent space, and you can operate more than, you know, one day a week or whatever. Most bingo is played at night, and I guess on weekends, Friday night, Saturday night, I guess there's Sunday bingo. Most of it is at night. I really don't, you know, no one is allowed in under 18. And, you know, the people, the nonprofit operating the bingo would be responsible for checking that. And if somebody comes in with the state, and I'm sure they do that, to check them, then they would lose their license to operate bingo or get put on probation or whatever. I don't know how that works exactly, but
Is the only thing you're planning to do is run bingo?
it's up to the charity themselves. There are what they call electronic pull tabs. It's a machine that is more than bingo. It's some people would say it's gambling, and that's part of the state law. And they can do that or not do that. That's up to the charity, and whatever they decide to do.
Okay.
So it would be up to them. But the law is all spelled out, and there's several pages of it. It's not just one or two pages.
Right.
So it's
Okay, all right.
You
Well,
might
thank you.
have to read it twice.
We'll go ahead and make a decision.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I'm ready to make a recommendation.
Okay.
I'm going to recommend denial of special use permit application PLSUP 2016-00000165 as submitted.
Can we have a second? Second by Mr. Garrison. And we'll call the roll call, please.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Okay, the next two items on the agenda, we'll do one public hearing. I'm going to turn the commission over to the vice chair to handle these. I have a conflict of interest, which I'm going to read. I'm Michael Scares, do hereby state that I have a conflict of interest regarding rezoning application PLRZ 201600000174 and also 176, filed by Paresh Suddarth, requesting to rezone parcels 75861 and 75860 from Old Town Residential to Highway Retail Commercial, listed on the agenda as item number 3 and item number 4. And therefore pursuant to the state and local government conflict of interest, code 2.2-3112, I must abstain from voting on these two items. So my firm represents the landowners, so I'm going to turn the meeting over for these two items to the vice chair.
Okay. What we have before us is a, can I do these together?
You do the public hearings together, but you have to vote separately.
Okay. All right. So we're going to consider rezoning application PLRZ 201600000147, filed by Paresh Sudhar, requested to rezone from Old Town Residential to Highway Retail Commercial. Parcel ID 75861. The applicant is proposing to develop the site into a motel, restaurant, conference center. Additionally, can I go ahead and read this one? Additionally, rezoning application PLRZ 201600000176, filed by Paresh Sudhar, requesting to rezone from Old Town Residential to Highway Retail Commercial, partial ID 75860. Again, the applicant is proposing to consolidate this parcel with parcel ID 75861 for commercial redevelopment into a motel, restaurant, and conference center. Staff report.
The subject properties, parcel IDs number 75861 and 75860 are Old Town residential and are located on the corner of South Main Street and Fulton Heights. The applicant, Paresh Suthar, is requesting to rezone both properties to highway retail commercial so they may be consolidated and developed into a motel, restaurant, and conference center. Parcel ID number 75861 is 3.23 acres and parcel ID number 75860 is 0.23 acres. Neither of the parcels have any improvements. The parcels are bordered by properties zoned Old Town residential. They are across South Main Street and Fulton Heights from properties zoned transitional office commercial and highway retail commercial. Staff recently, as of 9 o'clock this morning, got site plans for the proposed commercial development, and all those plans would require review and approval before any development could begin. 20 notices were sent to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and a full report is in front of you. Staff received a site plan at 9 a.m. this morning, which did not give staff appropriate time for review. Without appropriate time to review, neighbor concerns cannot be appropriately addressed. Due to lack of information, staff would recommend tabling rezoning applications PLRZ 2016 0000174 and PLRZ 2016 0000176 filed by Paresh Suthar, requesting to rezone from Old Town residential to highway retail commercial, parcel IDs number 75861 and 75860, otherwise known as Grid 1620, Block 005, parcel 000012, and Grid 1620, Block 005, parcel 000011, respectively, of the City of Danville, Virginia zoning district map. If Planning Commission disagrees with staff recommendation to table these requests to allow for the applicant to provide more information and possibly address neighborhood concerns, then staff would reluctantly recommend denial of rezoning applications PLRZ 2016 0000174 and PLRZ 2016 0000176 as submitted.
Okay, we're open for a public hearing. If someone wants to come speak to this, usually the developer person.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Talbot, and I'm with Dewberry here in town. We represent Mr. Suthar and provided the site plan that was sent over earlier this morning. As was mentioned by staff, Mr. Suthar proposes to develop these two parcels as a motel, conference center, possibly restaurant, and I'm here just to answer any questions that you may have, and I'm happy to do so.
We may come back to you. Okay. Any other people want to speak to this? Yes, come on. Now's your moment.
Thank you. My name is Sheila Baines, and I just learned of this earlier today when I was looking at the proposals that you had coming before you. And I do live close to that area, so I think it is an interesting proposition. I was disappointed that there was not enough information provided to be able to make an informed decision. So I like the idea of tabling until you have time to go over all the information, and so that those that live around it know what's taking place. But in that area, we would like to see more development come that way. So I would hope that you would make the decision to let the city go over the material and then let the neighbors know about what the development is. Thank you.
Okay. Are there others that want to speak? Yes, please. It's important to.
My name is Clara Charmello. I live on Fulton Heights. We have some real concerns about this. First of all, we didn't receive too much information on it, but with what information we did receive, Fulton Heights is a very short street. We do not have curbs, sidewalks, anything else that the rest of the city has. It is a dead-end street. One of the concerns we have is the traffic that this might bring in. Right now, getting out of our road certain times of the day is almost impossible. When Goodyear is either coming or going, their shifts, we just sit there and wait and wait and wait to get out of that street. It's a dead-end street, so we can't go out any other way but to come out right onto 86. Putting more traffic on that corner is going to make that worse. It's going to be almost impossible for us to get out. Also having a motel, a convention center, and what was the other thing?
Restaurant.
Yeah, that's a lot of people in a small area. Where are they going to park? If they start parking on Fulton Heights, it's a very narrow road. Like we say, there are no curbs. We're going to be blocked into our own driveways. I mean, we're already blocked into the street at certain times of the day. And to give us that additional traffic, we just don't need it. My question would be, the motel is a deep concern of ours. Is this going to be a little 6-room thing? Is it going to be, Danville has an awful lot of motels. I don't know why we need another one in such a small area. There are 2 bars right within a few blocks of that, which they have a lot of problems with. The police are constantly there. It is actually North Carolina, but it's within walking distance. And there's some characters, to put it nice, in those. Are they going to be bringing traffic to those motels? Is it going to be, that kind of a place? And I guess the dead-end street and the traffic accumulation on there is very quiet. There's only a few homes on that street. People that are there have lived there for years. We ourselves have lived there for 20 years, and we're considered the newcomers. And we're just afraid of what's going to happen without further information. We just don't need that kind of businesses right at the end of our street when there's no other way to get out. We're going to be blocked in there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there others which wish to speak related to this?
I'm Joyce Estabrook. I also live on Fulton Heights. We've lived there for 26 years. Mr. Armello echoes our concerns as well. Our property is within 300 feet of the proposed development. Our concerns, what separates us from the property, from the noise, from the commotion, what's taking place there. As she said, we live on a dead-end street coming out onto South Main, right there where Goodyear empties out, where the bypass takes place. There's a lot of traffic already there. There's not enough information at this point to know what would be the plan for that. We just are concerned about how that would affect our little neighborhood. So that's basically my concern at this point.
Good afternoon. My name's Mike Charmello. I just want to reiterate with some of the information that the 2 women just gave you. One of the biggest problems is we have the ramp coming off the Danville Expressway. Then we have traffic coming from Goodyear. And then we have traffic, people coming from North Carolina doing 60 to 70 miles an hour And then with the addition of a motel, it really wouldn't be convenient for this. Furthermore, we already have 10 motels in this town, and I understand there's another one being built across the street from Sam's Club. So why do we need something like another motel? It's mainly a big safety problem here. I don't know if any of you people know where Fulton Heights is, but it just comes so congested in that particular area. Like my wife said, sometimes we have to wait 5 to 10, 15 minutes to get out on that highway on 86. So I'm sure if any of you have traveled from 86 going to North Carolina, you probably have seen the same situation there. So I wish you would consider that, and I wish that all of you would go out there and take a ride someday and just time it and see yourself what the situation is there. It's not that we oppose everything development. We'd love to see development in this area. The town needs it, but not this type, okay? And we're not against motels or anything, but in that particular location, it's not good enough. It's a bad situation. Now, if you can come up with something more constructive, it'd be nice. Like the lady over here said that she would like to see some kind of development and not another motel, because it would be a big traffic problem. Thank you very much.
Can we ask are there any questions to people who are coming and speaking or anything?
If anybody else wants to speak, fine, but I'd
Anybody
like
else
to
wants-
talk to the representative from Dewberry at some point.
I have one question to those who have spoken. Have you all received or had any engagement with the plan that we have in front of us? That we got at 9 o'clock this morning? Okay. So there's not been any community interaction over this?
Can we put this on the screen? Do you even have the ability to put this on the screen?
No. I'm sorry, I just don't.
I understand.
Okay. Do you want to speak to? You want to speak
There's
to
a
the
spare on the tables that can be passed around. That's the best we can do. We just.
Yes, I have a couple questions for the representative from Dewberry. Is this going to be a national chain? Are you allowed to mention?
Not with specifics, but the intent is probably so, yes.
Okay. Is there any way that your entrance could be off of South Main and not off of Fulton Heights?
We would certainly be open to that if the city and VDOT would be amenable to that. I think our client would certainly be happy to entertain that idea, yes.
Okay.
Was there any particular reason it started off entering from Fulton Heights?
The only reason is if you look at grade there's quite a bit of grade to make up to get from the parcel itself to South Main. Not impossible, but I'll say not ideal. And to address some further comment with respect to parking and things like that, all parking would be on site. There would be no parking along any of the roadways adjacent to these parcels. Part of city code requires that there be appropriate amount of parking for the particular development, in this case hotel. So that would be part of the plan review and approval process that particular item would take place. The same with stormwater, the same with traffic. All of those things would be reviewed at the plan review at that time, and we would work with the various city departments on those items to get those approvals.
How many stories do you anticipate on this motel, and how many rooms?
Stories, we anticipate 3 stories, and the different layouts that we've seen are anywhere from 50 rooms to about 75 rooms, somewhere in that, probably somewhere in between those two figures.
If you brought the entrance from South Main, would you have to turn everything, or would it still be laid out facing the same way? Because it looks like you would come into the parking lot.
And how would he get to the back
And,
parking lot?
yeah,
Do you mean with respect to the building itself?
the building, this site plan, if you change just the entrance from Fulton Heights to Main Street, South Main Street, would that affect how that's sitting there?
It's possible. There's certainly room to turn this 90 degrees if that's more appropriate, without actually laying it out and seeing how it would flow. I can't speak for certain that would be the case, but there's certainly room to do that with the size of this lot.
Right. And it may take it a little further away from the neighborhood.
It is possible we could move it a little farther. That's correct.
And how high is this retaining wall?
The retaining wall would probably be in the neighborhood of, on our rough guesstimation, between 8 and 10 feet, somewhere in that neighborhood. The site falls in that direction. One thing that I am aware of, that currently there's an issue with the property to the north, that stormwater from these two parcels is currently being conveyed onto that. You know, that the parcels are not developed, so that's a natural condition. That's one thing that would be taken care of, and staff can also let you know that part of our plan review would be to ensure that the stormwater is contained on the site, treated on the site in accordance with state and local regulations, and that item would be addressed as part of the development.
Is that are there gonna be mosquitoes?
Are there gonna be mosquitoes?
We talked mosquitoes last month and with another situation.
We wouldn't have any type of stormwater management improvements that are out of the ordinary for other areas around the city. We have shown on here a stormwater pond. We obviously have not gone through any formal design at this time. There's a possibility the pond could be dry, the possibility that the pond would be an underground detention facility. We're unsure at this point, but what we do know is there's some type of stormwater management that will be required to develop this parcel.
One of the things here is that, so really what we have is a basic conceptual idea. We don't have anything
Correct.
that's like.
This is a preliminary layout for purposes of conveying an idea of what our client is looking to do. This obviously not set in stone, but as far as the hotel footprint, this is very similar to what we would anticipate would be.
One of the things that staff has recommended is that we table this. Basically, it sounds to me like they're basically conceptually okay with it, but it just wasn't enough information and things like that. So tabling, was there any reason why we couldn't just do that and give it time? I mean, there are other things that would, and to be able to come back, have you interact with the neighbors, you know, just all the kind of procedures that we kind of normally go through. Is there any aught that makes us, would keep us from tabling it, just so you all could have more time to clear up some of this stuff?
I mean, obviously the decision is up to the board, but it would just be a delay in development for our client.
Okay.
I had a question. One of the speakers from the neighborhood mentioned the narrow street, no curb, no gutters throughout that road. Would you see you making any, or the developer making any improvements to Fulton Heights Road, putting curb in or widening, or do you see that staying as it is?
At this point, I certainly can't promise that anything would happen. What I can say is we would construct an entrance in accordance with local and state regulations, and use standard commercial entrance details for those construction documents that are found on, you know, any other set of drawings that are reviewed and approved in the city now.
For staff, real quick, would that be required, any kind of road improvement through there? I know on one we approved, there were some road improvements that ultimately were gonna have to be done. Would this be similar, or?
Probably.
But
I
you-
didn't, again, with getting into 9 o'clock today, I didn't have a lot of time to look it over.
I understand.
We have a business on the other side, Gateway Health. Gateway was a low traffic volume facility, so they were able to do a commercial entrance off of that street, even though it was a substandard street. Now that we're, with this coming into it, depending on if the entrance is off of South Main or Fulton Heights, then, widening of the road may be necessary, some additional turn lane or something else may be necessary. These are the things that we would have looked at if
Right.
we would have had the plan before 9 o'clock this morning. So I assume that yes, there are going to be some improvements necessary, but at this point, I just can't say. I'm sorry.
Question. What do you anticipate this area up here being used as?
As far as future development or?
With that property, would it just be grass? I mean, would there be something else back there?
It would. As I mentioned, there is quite a bit of relief on this parcel as far as the topography. So that would be an area that we would need to use to bring everything to grade. At this point, there is no plan for any other development other than what's been included in the application.
Are there any other questions? I think we're still in the public hearing, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
I'll ask one more question. After hearing some of the neighbors speak and some of the opposition, some of their concerns, could you possibly see some tweaks in this that would address those if you had time? Now that you probably haven't heard their objections either, but now
Sure.
you have.
Sure.
Have you garnered anything that you could take back and maybe work with this and work with them? And if you had time, if you had 30 days?
Certainly, our intent is always is to be a good neighbor. And so we would certainly work with staff and with recommendation to, within reason, do what we can do.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And before we close the public hearing, anybody else want to make it?
My name's Susan Stillwell, and I didn't come down here to talk about this, but I will tell you, at least 3 or 4 times a week, I drive from my loft on Craighead out to our farm off the Park Springs Road. So I'm very familiar with this area. And sometimes I go to Southwick to shop at groceries. From the Dollar General, the Southwick Shopping Center, the residents who live in Southwick, the Valero Station, the Goodyear traffic, Lucky's and Cluck's. I have sat for as long as 20 minutes when I've come off the expressway trying to turn south on that road. Who is gonna pay for the stoplight? That's my question. Because you're gonna have to have one. Somebody's gonna have to pay for a stoplight. And if you don't believe me, go out there when Goodyear's leaving. Hundreds and hundreds of cars are coming out of there. It's a mess.
Yeah, okay.
Our house is at the low point on Fulton Heights. We have a lot next to us that a few years back, the city approached us. We did not have city sewage up until a few years ago. And they approached us and asked if they could run a sewer pipe through our property to hook up with the sewer line on Updike, which is the next street over. We gave them permission to run the sewer pipe. They dug a hole, they put in the pipe, it went through, no problems. What they didn't tell us was they also put in a drainage pipe across the road where the water coming from the 86 direction and also the water coming from the homes on Updike, it comes both ways and meets at that low point in our road. They put a pipe under the road where there's like a little ditch on both sides of the road. That's what we have for the rainwater to go to. When we have a heavy rain, That water comes both ways to go through that pipe. The pipe is the width of the road. I'm not sure how many feet that is, but it's a narrow road. That water empties out on our property, which makes that lot that we own, which we had plans, my daughter had plans to put home there. Right now, it has a river running through it every time we have heavy rain. The property is totally useless. I asked the city if they could put a pipe there, and if they need to run that water across, to run a pipe all the way to Updike, where there is a drain, you know, where the water goes down underground. They told us that it was too expensive, and they could not do it, and it just has to run across our property. So every time we have heavy rain, that lot has a little river running through it, and they don't have the money to put in a pipe to hook it up with Updike. So if they put something up at the corner with a cement parking lot, there's gonna be more water running down that road. There are no pipes on either side of the road. There is a ditch about this deep where they just dug out, so the water runs down there and goes through our lot onto Updike. Putting something up in that corner is gonna produce a lot more water coming down. Like I say, I've already lost a lot. That lot is 75 feet wide, 125 feet long, and it is totally useless because it has a river running through it.
All right, thank you. Anybody else on public? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing and, questions to
I'll just maybe for staff to address her concern and the water she's having, water issue. Would the stormwater pond retention solve any of that? I mean, I'm not sure exactly where the lot is, but it must be close. Would this help with that, or do we not know?
We would not know.
We wouldn't know.
I wouldn't want to make a promise and say it will take care of it. I would not know.
Okay.
And do you know whether or not you anticipate a stoplight?
I do not anticipate a stoplight at the intersection of Fulton Heights and South Main Street. Not based on this. Now, once we look at the number of units and others, we'll see, but I don't anticipate one there. There may be additional work further on South Main Street in the future, but not at this intersection, no.
Any other questions to staff? Okay, I will entertain a motion from somebody, and we need to vote these separately.
Yes.
Correct.
I would recommend tabling the rezoning application PRZ 2016-00000174.
Second.
Ms. Evans seconded, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Call the roll, I guess.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Abstain.
And we need a second recommendation.
We do, on that one too?
Well, for the little
This
teeny.
one? Yeah, okay, I would also move then. We recommend tabling of rezoning application PLRZ 2016-00000176.
Second.
Oh, you can call the roll.
Thank you for doing that. It makes it so much easier for my paperwork later on. I appreciate that. Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Abstain.
Question? Will the local residents receive notice of this meeting next
Yes.
month? Is there any way that you can include
Yes.
something like this in there?
They will, yeah, the site plan, we've got a smaller version, so we will include that when we send stuff out to them. Also, if we have any additional plans by them, we'll send that.
And I don't know if Dewberry is going to make any changes between now and then, but if they do, within a reasonable time, could we also include that?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Letters for that probably go out in a week or week and a half or so, so we'll have some time.
All right, next item on the agenda. Special use permit application, PLSUP 2016-00000173, filed by Two Crows LLC, requesting a special use permit to operate a restaurant at 1009 Main Street. The applicant is proposed to convert the building into a coffee house and a wine bar. We could have a staff report, please.
The subject property, 1009 Main Street, is zoned transitional office commercial and is located within the Old West End Historic District at the southeast corner of Main Street and Holbrook Avenue. The subject property is operated as an automobile repair facility with gasoline sales for approximately 87 years. The applicant, Two Crows LLC, is requesting a special use permit to operate a restaurant in the building. Two Crows LLC plans to convert the building into a coffee house and wine bar. According to our records, the present structure was built as a service station in 1969, replacing the existing service station that was built in 1927. The coffee house and wine bar is to have an assortment of seating options, including individual tables, community tables, and a bar-style counter. A fenced covered seating area is to be installed in front of the garage bays. The southern and western property lines will be screened from view with fencing. The southern property line will also have a landscape buffer. 18 parking spaces are to be installed. 1009 Main Street is located within the Old West End Historic District. Any changes proposed to the exterior of the structure or parking area that is visible from the public way will need to be reviewed by the Commission of Architectural Review. In November of 2015, the City Planning Commission denied a request to rezone the subject parcel so that the building could operate as a convenience store. The request was withdrawn by the applicant. The November hearing was well attended by community members, including surrounding property owners and other Old West End residents. At that hearing, community members expressed interest in converting the site into a coffee shop or other similar business. 22 notices were sent to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and a complete report is in front of you. Staff recommends approval of special use permit application PLSUP 2016-00000173, filed by Two Crows LLC to allow for operation of a restaurant in accordance with Article 3I, Section C, Item 15 of the Code of the City of Danville, Virginia, 1986, as amended at 1009 Main Street. Staff recommends approval with the condition that the hours of operation open to the public be limited to a maximum of 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. Friday through Sunday.
Okay, thank you. Open the public hearing. For those who'd like to speak on this item, come up, please. Hi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, staff. I am Rick Barker, and I reside at 135 Holbrook Avenue in the Old West End, where I've lived since 1987. Before you today, you have an application for a special use permit to convert this 1969 former Exxon station into a new food and beverage concept called Crema and Vine. Crema and Vine will be an early day coffee shop and late day wine bar with a concentration on premium beverages. This concept was developed by my partner, Steve Del Giorno. He invited me to this concept, and so I'll tell you how we see the division of our responsibilities. I will concentrate on the physical property, if you will. I will be concerned with upgrading the building, designing the interior design and the outdoor dining patio space, as well as the parking and the grounds. And in a moment, you'll meet Steve, who has a great career in the food industry from the time he worked at his dad's Golden Corral here in Danville, from all the way through living in Asia for over a decade, working in the food business. And I offer my long-term residency in the Old West End as compared to Steve, who is the Old West End's newest residents, having just purchased a house on Main Street. So I live about 50 yards from the property in question, and Steve will now live about 2 blocks from the corner of Main and Holbrook. At the urging of Corey Teague about 2 months ago, she asked us in advance of this project to meet with our neighbors. And at Mr. Leakey's house on Main Street, we announced a meeting and collected about 20, 25 of our neighbors, where we presented this concept to see if it was acceptable to the neighbors, if there would be support, if there would be opposition, with the idea that if the neighbors did not think this was a good idea, Steve and I had not gone so far that we could not easily withdraw. And that meeting had an impact on me. I thought that Steve had come up with a good idea with this coffee shop / wine bar concept. And when I left the neighborhood meeting, I was convinced he had a great idea. The support that has been offered to each of us, as well as monitoring some of the comments online, has actually been overwhelming. So we think that this is a great concept for the neighborhood and for the Main Street corridor, connecting the River District with the hospital and with Averett University. And so I think we have, I've counted over a dozen neighbors who I think are here today in support of this concept. We know that this has been a difficult site. We know that you have turned down 2 former requests for a special use permit for this location. And we understand that this long-term commercial site in the center of a historic neighborhood and beside a major landmark in the Danville Museum of Fine Arts and History is actually problematic to what some of the neighbors might want. And at our neighborhood meeting, I offered as a good example that it's Steve and I's intention to take this concept and integrate it into the neighborhood as beautifully as Midtown Supermarket. Being neighbors, we have the same concern as our fellow neighbors with the concerns that we've seen raised at the last 2 applications. Among those being noise, traffic, loitering, littering, unreasonable hours of operation, and we've taken all that into consideration. And so just as all the neighbors now consider Midtown to be an asset in the community that we would not want to live without, it would be our goal to operate in such a way that in a year or 2 or 3 that Trim and Vine would be a food concept that the neighbors would not want to live without, that will promote the walkability of the neighborhood, where neighbors from as maybe far away as the West Main area can walk to or bike to. And so that's our plan. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the rendering and the parking layout, which hopefully would answer some of your questions. And with that being said, I'd like for you to hear from my partner, Steve, who can speak to the food concept.
Thank you, Rick. Good afternoon. I'm Steve Del Giorno. I'm here. I can help answer any questions you might have about what's inside the building, the concept, and possibly the execution. Not everything is 100% decided right now, but we're to this point. But the general business plan and the operating plan is pretty, maybe 80% set in stone. One thing I wanted to add in this is that there's a tremendous amount of research that you can find, and I have it as well, that shows that coffee shops that go into historic neighborhoods actually increase the real estate value of those neighborhoods. Rick alluded to the walkability factor. That all plays into how these neighborhoods can actually increase in their value, because people want to be able to just walk out the door, and now we can go not only to a Midtown, but now to a coffee shop or wine bar, which will make it an even more attractive place to live in the OWE. And I think that's why all these excited people behind me are here today who also want to speak possibly about this. So, thank you.
Thank you. I applaud you for stepping up and taking the chance, and I'm sure it'll be successful with y'all's track record. So we'll applaud you for that. And because I think it's probably one of the few things that would be acceptable from what we've seen so far. Did any of you have any questions you want to ask them while
You
they're
have a
up
problem
here?
with the conditions on the hours of operation?
No, I don't foresee us wanting to stay open till midnight on weekends, so yeah, we'll be within those hours without a problem.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay.
Just another high-quality presentation, Rick. It's nice to see the pictures and the elevations and the layout on the plot, and it makes our job so much easier.
Yes.
Could we have the residents that are here backing you stand up for a second?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
They have, with their comments and their feedback, they have helped shape this concept.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we know you're all in support. If there's anybody that wanted to come up and say anything, you're certainly welcome to do so.
I don't think they have the nerve.
Say something very briefly. Melanie Vaughn at 235 West Main. I think we are so fortunate to have men like Steve and Rick. Rick, a longtime supporter of Danville and everything he does, and Steve, now a new Danville resident, who is also supporting our city. This is just awesome, and then we just need more of this. So I think I can speak for all of us. We're just thrilled about this, and I think this will be a big boon to the museum, in addition to the other locations they mentioned. And I mean, it's terrific that they're willing to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. But I'd like to say a few words also, particularly because I've been here twice before, about the uses of that property that were turned down. And I want to tell you specifically, I don't remember the date of the planning meeting, but I do remember presenting to City Council December 15th of last year, 2015. The results, luckily you guys turned it down. We had Fran Bachman in the back and it helped to collect over 120, I don't know how many. 200, huh? Well, anyway, hundreds of signatures on a petition against something, but we had been thinking we need to come up with a plan of something before. And so I passed out a one-pager to City Council taken from the Charles Bukey report. And I want to thank Paul Lippi for organizing meetings at his house. The two of us started something called Next Door, which is a neighborhood organization. We have more than 500 members, 10 different neighborhoods around the city. The biggest one is Grove Park, actually. And I had used this to try to get positive feedback. And so a number of people said, why are you having the meeting at 3 o'clock? Do you have to be retired to come to this meeting? And so I promised that I would pass on their comments, their positive comments. But in fact, so I have actually about 10 people who couldn't make it because they had to work. But everyone thinks it's a wonderful idea, the concept of this restaurant. And in fact, it's more than just being an important corner in a historic district. I want to remind you about that map, if you haven't seen it. It is actually from the River District to Averett. This is actually the core Main Street corridor of Danville. It's not just the fancy old houses. And in fact, the museum and that building, the Exxon station, is really the epicenter of this part of Danville, which is super important. And so really we're talking about from downtown to Averett. There's not much business. And Charles Bukey had pointed out we need to develop commercial businesses other than the hospital in this area, because all these people at the hospital have to drive to Greensboro to get groceries, and I mean, where do you get lunch? So in fact, this is a wonderful idea. I was going to ask for our supporters to stand up, but thank you for doing it, because everyone is here because we invited people to come. And in fact, we had 2 meetings at Paul Lippi's house. One on around June 1st or 2nd, there were 25 people. And then at 616, Steve organized a reception, and we had also about 20 people from the neighborhood. So this is actually a wonderful idea. I haven't had any negative comments by anybody except, and the only comment that wasn't enthusiastic is, what is on the menu? And so we're looking forward to when this is going to open, and I hope we'll meet you all at the restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
I would just like to say, in reference to what Steve was saying the last time we were here, we did not feel that we were against, and we need to say this and put this on record, we were not against the former people. We were just against the concept of a convenience store and the situation that would come with that, all the issues that would come with that. And so I'm very pleased that Rick and Steve are stakeholders, and that's what we really want. And I came up here to say that when you, at your planning meetings and you think about Danville and making progress in Danville, these are the type of things that make progress in our neighborhoods, and we're stakeholders. And I think we all want what's best for Danville, and I think you can't say it enough in Danville. We want people who believe. We want people who believe in the OWE, and we want people who believe in Danville and downtown. And you have your critics and your naysayers, and I wanted to come up here and say this. The two gentlemen that are taking the risk, I am greatly appreciative of it. I think it will help the Old West End, the Westmoreland Neighborhood Organization, and it will carry us in a right direction. And so in the area of Five Forks, and I'm going to keep on harping on this, there are situations over in Jefferson and Pine and Green and Chestnut Place. Don't forget about development over there. That's important. We want this whole area developed. We don't want to leave anybody behind in the Old West End. So when other businesses would come to Danville and say, well, where can we start a business, send them over to the OWE. Thank you.
Your name for the record, just.
Beverly Richardson, and I live at 731 Grove Street.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Close the public hearing. Any other comments, questions? If not, maybe a motion.
I'd be happy to make this motion. Recommend approval of special use permit application PLSUP 2016-0000-173. And I'm going to say with conditions for staff because that has the hours on there.
Second by Mr. Bolton.
Bolton, thanks.
We could have a roll, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 13th meeting. Any corrections or changes? If there aren't any, all in favor of approving them? Say aye. Any opposed? None? Okay. Other business?
The items that you had in front of you last month, the rezoning, the veterinary clinic, and the code amendment were all approved by City Council. Anna will be going to the Virginia Planning Association conference next week, so hopefully she'll be bringing back some good information for you the following meeting. We have a large agenda for next month's meeting already, not counting the items that got tabled today. So just, if you're not going to be here next month, let us know, but I think we probably have 7-8 cases already.
What day next month is that?
August the 8th.
So hoping everybody will be here so we can take care of that.
Good.
Okay.
And as I told you beforehand, the department now has iPads that we will be sharing with all the boards and commissions. These were kind of tests, but we have our own set that we will be providing. So each meeting we will have an electronic version of the agenda as well as showing it up on the screens. We'll still give you hard copies if you don't want the hard copy anymore and you're fine just getting the email version, because we'll be having them on a screen in front of you. Just let us know because it'll help save us in printing costs. Those who like hard copies, we'll still make them and send them to you. But if you could save us some money, that would be great. So that's all we have.
Anything else from you guys? Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Ken, who dropped my hard